Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am so glad you could join me today. Whether you are driving to work, walking the dog, or just enjoying a quiet cup of coffee at home, I want to invite you to settle in. Today we are going to unpack a story that sounds like a political thriller, but is actually a masterclass in communication. Our story today features two main characters. On one side, we have Brian Armstrong. If you follow the world of finance or technology, you know him as the CEO of Coinbase, one of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges in the United States. On the other side, we have the White House, the center of political power in America. Recently, the rumor mill has been spinning out of control. Social media and news headlines have been painting a picture of a massive feud. People have been whispering that Brian Armstrong and the White House are locked in a bitter conflict, like two heavyweight boxers staring each other down in the ring. If you hold any digital assets, hearing this might make you nervous. When two giants fight, it is usually the little guys like us who get stepped on. But is this dramatic movie script actually true? Brian Armstrong recently stepped up to the microphone to clear the air, and his message was surprisingly calm. He essentially said, "No, we are not fighting. This is not a scene from a Hollywood drama." Let me break down what is actually happening. Brian explained that the situation between Coinbase and the government is not a clash, but an ongoing negotiation. He completely denied that there is any hostile confrontation. To make this easier to understand, let us use an example we've all been through. Imagine you are at a car dealership looking to buy a used car. The dealer has a sticker price on the windshield that says $20,000. You look at it and say, "I will give you $17,000. The dealer frowns and says, "I cannot do that. How about $19,000? This back and forth is a negotiation. You have different views on the price. You want to save money and he wants to make a profit. But you are not enemies. You are not throwing the keys at his face or screaming at him. You are both trying to reach a deal where you drive away with the car and he gets paid." This is exactly what is happening with Brian Armstrong and the White House. Brian explains that the crypto industry is still very young. Think of the crypto industry like a brilliant but rebellious teenager. This teenager is full of energy and new ideas, but does not like following the old rules. The White House and regulators are like the strict parents or the school principal. As the teenager grows up, they want freedom. They want to stay out late and try new things. The parents, however, want safety. They want to make sure the kid does not get hurt or burn the house down. Naturally, there is friction. The parents might not understand why the kid spends so much time on the computer, and the kid thinks the parents are old-fashioned. But here's the key point Brian is making. They are sitting at the dinner table talking. When he says negotiation is ongoing, it means the channel of communication is open. This is very different from a Cold War where nobody speaks to each other. There is something funny about how the media handles this. A quiet meeting in a conference room is boring. It doesn't sell newspapers or get clicks. So if someone raises their voice slightly, the headlines scream "War on Crypto." But for the people in the room, like Brian, it's just business. He understands that to create laws for something as complex as digital currency, there will be debates, there will be tension. But that tension is there to build a solution, not to destroy the industry. Brian also shared a very important perspective. He said his goal is not to fight the government. Instead, he wants to educate them. Imagine trying to explain TikTok to your grandfather. At first, he might think it is just loud noise and a waste of time. He might even tell you to put the phone away. But if you sit down and patiently explain that this is how you connect with friends, how you learn new recipes, and how people build businesses, he might slowly start to get it. The process Brian calls negotiation is actually a process of education. He is trying to tell the White House, "Look, we are not the bad guys. This technology can help the American economy. Let us work together to write fair rules so we can grow safely instead of just banning everything." So why am I telling you this story today? Why does it matter? It matters because it shows maturity. It shows that the industry is growing up. Instead of going on Twitter to complain or play the victim, the leader of a major company is choosing to show up, wear a suit, and talk. He is choosing professionalism. I think this is really profound. In life, we are often terrified of conflict. When someone disagrees with us, our first instinct is often to get defensive, to put up our walls, or to storm out of the room. We treat disagreement like a battle where one person has to win and the other has to lose. But listening to Brian, I realized that disagreement is actually just an invitation to negotiate, and negotiation is the path to partnership. If Brian and the White House did not argue, there would never be clear rules. The industry would always be operating in the shadows, afraid of being shut down. Because of this difficult conversation, the result will likely be a safer environment for everyone, including investors like you and me. Let me add a little humor here. The relationship between tech companies and the government is a bit like meeting your partner's parents for the first time. The parents look at you with suspicion. They wonder if you are good enough for their child. You feel like they're judging your haircut and your job. It is awkward. But if you keep showing up, keep being polite, and help do the dishes after dinner, eventually they realize you are a decent person. Brian Armstrong is currently doing the dishes at the White House. Now, I want you to take a moment to think about how we consume news. When we hear rumors of conflict, we panic, but the reality is usually much less dramatic and much more constructive. This brings us to the most important part of our podcast. How can we apply this information to our own lives? I have gathered 3 big takeaways for myself, and I think they will help you too. First, practice critical thinking when you hear rumors. We live in an age of clickbait. People love to exaggerate. When you hear that 2 people are at war, or a company is about to collapse, or a relationship is over, do not believe it instantly. Be like Brian Armstrong. Look for the nuance. Listen to what the people involved are actually saying. Do not let fear drive your decisions. Do not sell your investments or cut off a friend just because of gossip. Remember, noise is not the same as truth. Second, reframe conflict resolution. We need to change our mindset from fighting to negotiating. When you have a problem with your boss, your neighbor, or your spouse, do not view them as an enemy you need to defeat. View them as a partner you need to negotiate with. The goal is not to prove that you are right and they are wrong. The goal is to find a solution that works for both. Be patient. Explain your side calmly, just like Brian is explaining crypto to the regulators. Being defensive rarely works, but being constructive almost always does. Third, have patience with the big things. Big changes and acceptance take time. You cannot expect people to understand your vision overnight. The negotiation between Coinbase and the government could take years. Applying this to yourself, if you are working on a difficult project, trying to break a bad habit, or building a career, accept that there will be resistance. There will be days when you feel misunderstood. Do not quit. Keep the dialogue open. Keep showing up. The breakthrough will come. To wrap this up, today's story was not just about financial news. It was a real-life example of civilized and professional behavior under pressure. Brian Armstrong chose the hard road of dialogue over the easy road of anger, and that is something we can all learn from. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. I hope it gave you a fresh perspective, helped lower your anxiety about the market, and gave you some tools for your own life. If you found this story interesting or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. Maybe they are feeling stressed and need to hear that things are not as bad as they seem. And if you have a similar story about how you turned a conflict into a negotiation in your own life, I would love to hear it. I hope you have a wonderful, peaceful day. Keep a cool head and a warm heart. Goodbye, and I will see you in the next episode.